Imagine you're a U-boat commander in 1942. Every morning, you tap a few letters into a box of wires and rotors, press a key, and out pours perfect secrecy. Berlin receives your message, decodes it, and issues orders, confident that no enemy on Earth can read a single word. That box is Enigma, the most feared encryption device of World War II, and the Germans believed it was mathematically unbreakable. They were wrong. Tonight, we're going inside the silent war behind the war, the Code War. We'll see how eccentric geniuses, exhausted clerks, and daring sailors turned a machine of terror into a fatal weakness. This isn't just about one clever trick. It's a story of math, espionage, and staggering human effort that shortened the war by years and remained an absolute secret for decades. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll never look at a simple typed message the same way again. To understand how Enigma was broken, we need to understand why it mattered. In World War II, information moved at the speed of radio. Whoever controlled the airwaves controlled the battlefield. Germany's Enigma machine encrypted millions of messages, naval positions, Luftwaffe raids, supply schedules, everything. The Allies could listen, but they couldn't read a thing. In this video, we'll trace the entire story. The Polish mathematicians who struck the first blows, Alan Turing and the Bletchley Park team, and the shadowy naval operations that fed them captured material. We'll separate myth from reality, look at the actual math tricks involved, and see how this secret victory remained buried for 30 years. If you enjoy deep dive history and want more stories like this, consider subscribing and tapping the notification bell. And watch through to the end. We'll connect Enigma's fall to the way modern encryption and cyber warfare work today. First, what exactly was Enigma? At a glance, it looked like a heavy wooden typewriter in a box. Inside, though, was a carefully engineered maze of electrical pathways. The operator chose a daily key, rotor order, ring settings, plug board wiring, then typed plain German. Each key press lit up a scrambled letter on a lamp board. The same machine with the same settings on the receiving end would reverse the process. 3, or later 4, rotors spun like an odometer, changing the wiring with each keystroke. A plug board in front swapped pairs of letters, adding another layer. The result was an astronomical number of possible configurations, on the order of 10 to the power of 114 for some models. German cryptographers were convinced that even if the Allies stole a machine, they could never search that space and time. This belief, that complexity equals invincibility, was Enigma's greatest strength, and ultimately its fatal weakness. The story of breaking Enigma doesn't start in Britain. It begins in Poland in the 1930s with a young mathematician named Marian Rejewski. The Polish Cipher Bureau had a problem. Germany had adopted Enigma for military use, and traditional linguists couldn't make a dent. So they tried something new, mathematics. Rejewski used permutation theory and limited intelligence about commercial Enigma models to reconstruct the wiring of the military version, without ever seeing inside it. He and his colleagues, Jerzy Różycki and Henryk Zygalski, then built Bomba Kryptologiczna, the first electromechanical machine designed to search Enigma settings. They exploited early German operating procedures like repeating part of the key at the start of a message to reduce the search space. It was still hard, but suddenly Enigma was not invincible. By the late 1930s, Poland was reading a significant fraction of German traffic, quietly and at immense risk. Their work would become the critical foundation for everything that followed at Bletchley Park. As war loomed, Poland knew it couldn't stand alone. In July 1939, just weeks before Germany invaded, Polish intelligence invited British and French representatives to Pirie, near Warsaw. There they revealed their extraordinary secret. Not only had they been reading Enigma traffic, they had rebuilt the machine and created tools to attack it. They handed over replica Enigmas, documentation, and their methods. For the British, who had struggled for years, it was a revelation. But the gift came with a ticking clock. Once war began, Germany changed procedures, added rotors, and tightened security. The Polish bombs would soon be overwhelmed. When Poland fell, many of its cryptanalysts fled through Romania and France. continuing their work in exile. Meanwhile, in Britain, a country house called Bletchley Park was quietly transformed into a code-breaking factory. There, a new cast of characters, including a shy, eccentric mathematician named Alan Turing, picked up the Polish torch and carried it further than anyone imagined. Bletchley Park looked like nothing more than an English country estate. Lawns, trees, a slightly shabby mansion. Inside, it was the nerve center of Allied signals intelligence. By late 1940, thousands of people worked there in shifts: mathematicians, linguists, chess champions, crossword enthusiasts, and young women from the services, all sworn to absolute secrecy. The operation was divided into huts, each with its own specialty. Hut 6 and Hut 8 focused on Army, Air Force, and naval Enigma, respectively. Information flowed in from listening stations across Britain, where operators recorded endless streams of Morse. At Bletchley, those streams were turned into paper, then patterns, then guesses, then sometimes decrypted intelligence codenamed Ultra. Alan Turing arrived in 1939 and quickly became central to attacking naval Enigma, the most crucial and dangerous target. But Bletchley was never a solo genius story. It was an industrial-scale intelligence operation powered by overworked, underslept people doing mind-numbing tasks for a war they couldn't discuss. To crack Enigma daily, Bletchley needed a way to search vast key spaces fast. Building on Polish ideas, Turing designed a new kind of machine, the British bomb. Imagine tall cabinets filled with rotating drums, each drum representing an Enigma rotor. Rows of these simulated many machines at once, wired to test logical constraints derived from educated guesses about the plaintext. The key insight wasn't brute force, it was reducing the problem. If you suspected that part of a message said Wettervorhersage, weather forecast, or followed a standard format, you could construct a crib and a logical network of letter relationships. The bomb would then race through possible settings, eliminating contradictions. Turing's designs were refined by engineer Gordon Welchman, who added a crucial diagonal board, massively improving efficiency. The result? Instead of weeks, some daily keys could be found in hours. But bombs were only as good as the cribs and captured material they were fed. Naval Enigma, used by U-boats, was the nightmare target. Unlike many army networks, the German Navy enforced stricter procedures, used additional rotors, and changed keys more rigorously. Meanwhile, in the Atlantic, U-boat wolf packs were sinking Allied merchant ships at staggering rates. Without reading their signals, Britain risked starvation. Alan Turing's Hut 8 focused almost obsessively on this system. They hunted for recurring phrases, weather reports, convoy sighting formats, routine status messages that could serve as cribs. Small slips by German operators, like repeating a mistake or using predictable headings, became lifelines. Every decoded message was time-sensitive. Knowing the position of a U-boat today was only useful if convoys could be rerouted tomorrow. Delays killed people. This urgency drove the expansion of the bomber fleet and relentless 24/7 operations. But there was another problem. To construct effective cribs and confirm rotor wiring changes, Bletchley needed more than intercepted radio. They needed the enemy's own paperwork. Code breaking is as much about espionage as math. Throughout the war, the Allies launched risky operations to capture Enigma machines, rotors, and most importantly, codebooks from German ships and submarines. One famous example is the 1941 capture of U-110 by the Royal Navy. After a depth charge attack, U-110 surfaced and was abandoned. A British boarding party, not yet sure if the sub would sink or explode, rushed below decks. They found Enigma equipment and current codebooks, exactly what Bletchley needed. The sub eventually went down, but the secret haul survived. Dozens of such seizures, sometimes from weather ships or supply vessels, fed Bletchley with keys, operating instructions, and new rotor wirings. Each success temporarily made Enigma more predictable. The trick was to use the intelligence without revealing how valuable the captures had been, so the Germans wouldn't realize their cryptographic crown jewel had been compromised. Breaking Enigma wasn't a one-time miracle, it was a daily race. Each network, Army, Air Force, Navy, different theaters, had its own key, changed at intervals. Bletchley relied heavily on what modern cryptographers would call traffic analysis, looking at patterns of who signaled whom, when, and how often, even before you knew the content. Operators logged message headers, call signs, and timings, building social graphs of German units. If a familiar station suddenly talked to new partners, something was happening. Once a few messages for a given day were broken, analysts used the content to refine cribs and procedures for the next day. They also exploited human habits. Weather reports followed templates. Station logons often reused phrases. Some operators disobeyed rules and repeated parts of old keys or plain text. Each small leak shaved off possibilities in the key space, letting the bombs finish the job. Enigma fell not to perfect theory, but to real-world imperfections. One reason Enigma's defeat stayed secret for decades is that the Allies had to hide their success in real time. If the Germans suspected their traffic was compromised, they could change machines or procedures drastically, resetting the game. So Allied commanders often had to pretend they'd learned information from other sources, reconnaissance flights, patrols, captured documents, when in reality it came from ultra-decrypts. For example, if Enigma revealed a convoy's route, the RAF might stage a lucky aerial sighting first, giving a plausible excuse for redirecting ships. This deception was ethically messy. Sometimes convoys could not be saved without revealing too much. Decisions were made to act or not act based on protecting Ultra. It's a brutal calculus, sacrificing some lives intentionally to save many more in the long run. Yet because the secret held, Enigma remained in German service until the end of the war, quietly undermining their own operations. What did all this actually achieve? Historians debate exact numbers, but there's broad agreement. Ultra-intelligence, much of it from Enigma, shortened the war in Europe by perhaps 2 to 4 years and saved countless lives. In the Battle of the Atlantic, decrypted U-boat traffic helped reroute convoys around wolf packs and target submarines more effectively. In North Africa, reading Rommel's communications let the Allies anticipate movements and plan counterattacks. Before D-Day, knowledge of German dispositions in France informed where and when to land. But code breaking was never a magic bullet. Messages were sometimes late, wrong, or misleading. Field commanders had to weigh Ultra alongside other intelligence and on-the-ground reality. And ordinary soldiers usually had no idea that a hidden stream of mathematics and machinery was shaping their orders. The scale is staggering. By war's end, Bletchley was reading millions of messages, with entire battles quietly influenced by invisible words. Popular culture often collapses the Enigma story into Alan Turing solved it. Turing was unquestionably pivotal, especially against naval Enigma, but the reality is richer and messier. Polish pioneers deduced the wiring and invented the first bombs. Gordon Welchman's diagonal board made British bombs powerful. Women operators ran the machines, organized intercepts, and did much of the analytic grind. There were other parallel battles too. British and American teams broke not just Enigma, but the even more complex Lorenz cipher used for Hitler's high-level communications. That required Colossus, one of the first programmable electronic computers designed by Tommy Flowers. Layer onto this the immense secrecy, the later persecution of Turing for his sexuality, and the delayed recognition of thousands of veterans whose contributions remained classified into the 1970s. The Code War's heroes are many, and for decades most had no monuments, just memories and nightmares of work they weren't allowed to acknowledge. Let's pull the threads together. Enigma was designed to be unbreakable by sheer complexity. The Germans trusted mathematics, but not quite enough. They layered rotors and plugboards, yet left cracks, flawed procedures, reused phrases, and human error. Polish mathematicians turned those cracks into the first systematic attack. British and American teams industrialized that attack with bombs, traffic analysis, and eventually electronic computing. Crucially, this was not a story of lone geniuses magically decrypting war-winning messages. It was a sprawling ecosystem. Captured codebooks from perilous naval raids, disciplined radio intercept stations, anonymous clerks and typists, and commanders willing to hide their advantage to preserve it. The Code War shows that security is never just about strong algorithms or clever machines, it's about how humans use them, the assumptions they make, and the ways those assumptions fail. That lesson echoes directly into today's digital world. In a sense, Enigma wasn't broken once, it was broken anew every single day. If this deep dive into the secret war behind World War II changed how you think about codes and conflict, there's a lot more to explore. We've only skimmed the surface of the mathematics behind Enigma, the personalities at Bletchley, and the parallel story of Lorenz and the birth of modern computing. On this channel, we unpack complex historical and technological stories just like this, carefully, critically, and in full context. So if you'd like to keep exploring how hidden systems shape our world, consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss upcoming episodes. In the comments, tell me which angle you'd like a full episode on next. The Polish Cipher Bureau's early work, a character study of Alan Turing beyond the myths, or a technical breakdown of how a bomb search actually works step by step. Thanks for watching all the way through. Share this with someone who loves history or cybersecurity, and I'll see you in the next investigation.